Welcome back, everyone. Today we're doing a deep dive into something I find absolutely fascinating, conversational hypnosis.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing stuff.
And we're really going to zero in on the work of Virginia Eimer.
She's really a leading expert.
She's got this unique approach to sort of working around this thing called the critical factor, this kind of mental gatekeeper in all of our minds.
Exactly.
So to kick things off, could you maybe explain, what is the critical factor and how does it play into therapy?
Okay, so the critical factor is, well, it's kind of like this filter, right? It's part of our subconscious, and it's always looking out for us, kind of protecting us from information that might be harmful or unwanted, like a spam filter almost.
Okay, so it's a good thing then, right?
Well, it can be, yeah,
Yeah.
but it can also be a bit of a roadblock sometimes, especially in therapy.
Oh, I see. How so?
Well, because sometimes this critical factor, it can resist suggestions, even if they are for our own good. If it senses something that doesn't quite align with our existing beliefs or our experiences, it can kind of put up a wall.
Oh, okay. I'm starting to get it.
Yeah.
So how does that make conversational hypnosis different from traditional hypnotherapy?
Right. So traditional hypnotherapy, it often uses kind of very direct suggestions and formal inductions.
Yeah, like telling someone to close their eyes and count backwards.
Exactly. And this can sometimes trigger that critical factor even more.
Ah, I see. So it's kind of like when someone tells you, don't think about a pink elephant.
Yeah.
And then that's all you can think about.
Yes, exactly like that. Now, what Virginia Eimer recommends, and this is where it gets really interesting,
Yummy.
she suggests that you can actually start therapy before the client even realizes that therapy's happening.
Wait, what? How do you even do that? Therapy before hypnosis? How is that possible?
Well, she doesn't use those traditional induction techniques that can kind of set off alarm bells for the critical factor. Instead, she really emphasizes building rapport and sparking genuine curiosity about the client and their experiences.
So it's more about connection and conversation than putting someone into a trance.
Yes, exactly. And this is where things get really cool. She focuses on asking these open-ended questions, especially ones that begin with when, where, how, what, and with whom.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Why those specific words?
Well, because these types of questions, they're very subtle, but they naturally guide the client into a state of kind of introspection and self-discovery.
Hmm.
And because it just feels like a normal conversation, that critical factor doesn't get triggered.
Wow, that's fascinating. So it's like a detective carefully gathering clues to understand a bigger picture.
Exactly. And this approach, it allows the therapist to bypass the critical factor completely and access the unconscious mind much more easily, leading to deeper, more authentic change.
It's mind-blowing. It seems like this approach, it just turns the whole idea of hypnosis on its head.
Mm,
It's less about hypnotizing someone and more about creating this safe space where they can explore their own inner world.
exactly. Exactly. And by tapping into the power of the unconscious mind in this way, conversational hypnosis, it opens up a whole new landscape for healing and growth.
I can already tell this is going to be a fascinating deep dive.
It really is.
But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's back up for a second and really break down the key differences between conversational hypnosis and traditional hypnotherapy. I think that will help us really appreciate how unique Eimer's approach really is.
Absolutely. That's a great idea. Yeah, so one of the biggest differences is that traditional hypnotherapy, with its reliance on scripts, it's kind of like imagine trying to explore this vast, uncharted territory, but you're only given this tiny little predetermined map.
Okay, so you're stuck on this one path. You can't really see the whole picture.
Right. But with conversational hypnosis, especially like Eimer's method, it's more like you're given the tools to create your own map.
Yeah.
You have the freedom to explore any direction you want.
Oh, that's a great analogy. So much more personalized.
Exactly. And another key difference is how they approach that critical factor we were talking about. Traditional hypnotherapy it sometimes tries to overpower it, with direct suggestions.
Right, but we just talked about how that can backfire, make the unconscious mind even more resistant.
Exactly. But Eimer's method, it's more about subtlety, gently guiding the client's attention and awareness. It's almost like a dance.
Okay, so instead of fighting that mental gatekeeper, you're kind of sneaking past it.
That's a great way to put it. And this gentle approach, it can be really helpful for people who might be skeptical of traditional hypnotherapy.
Yeah. If you're already a little hesitant about hypnosis, I can see how being told to just close your eyes and relax could feel a little, I don't know, like you're giving up control.
Exactly. So Eimer's approach, it feels more like a natural conversation. It's more inviting, more reassuring, especially for people who are new to this.
So it really empowers the client to take an active role.
Yes. And that's one of the reasons it can be so effective, because when you feel like you're part of the process, you know you're not just being done to, you're much more likely to embrace those changes, make them last.
It all comes back to just asking the right questions, huh?
You got it. And there's this fascinating technique that IMIR uses. It's called clean language. And basically, it involves reflecting the client's own words back to them, which creates this really deep connection. And it encourages them to explore their experience in a whole new way.
I've heard of that. It
Yeah.
sounds really subtle but powerful.
It is. It's like this gentle nudge in the right direction. Do you want an example of how it works?
Yeah, I'd love to hear one.
Okay, so imagine a client says something like, I feel stuck in a rut. Now, instead of offering solutions or interpretations right away, the therapist using clean language might just reply, and when you feel stuck in a rut, what kind of a rut is that rut?
Ooh, that's good. So they're using the client's own words. So the therapist isn't imposing their own interpretations.
Exactly. It honors the client's unique perspective, helps them tap into their own wisdom. And there are other techniques that IMIR uses too, like metaphors and stories. You see the unconscious mind, it loves metaphors.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, we use metaphors all the time, right, to explain complicated ideas.
Exactly. Think about it. We say, I'm feeling under the weather, or I'm drowning in work. These are metaphors. They get the point across without being literal.
So in therapy, these metaphors, they can kind of give the client this safe way to explore tough emotion.
Yeah, exactly. It's like this symbolic representation of their internal world.
Mhm.
And that allows them to process things on a deeper level.
Wow, this is really making me rethink the power of language. You know how we can use it to influence ourselves and others? It's incredible. Are there any other techniques she uses to kind of work around that critical factor?
Well, one thing Eimer really emphasizes is metaphors and stories. The unconscious mind, it just loves metaphors. They bypass the critical factor completely, speak right to the heart of the matter.
That makes sense. Metaphors are how we explain so much in our daily lives.
Precisely. And in a therapeutic setting, using metaphors, well, it can create this safe space for clients, to explore those difficult emotions or those difficult experiences without feeling threatened.
It's like they can process things indirectly, like they're not facing it head on.
Right. And Imira is just, she's brilliant at weaving these metaphors and stories into her sessions, creates this rich tapestry of meaning for her clients.
I can see how that would be so powerful, especially for people who have a hard time expressing themselves directly.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because while all these techniques are designed to kind of slip past the critical factor, the client isn't completely unaware of what's happening, right?
Right. That's a great point. It's not about mind control or anything like that.
No, it's more about creating the right conditions for the unconscious mind to do its thing, to open up and work its magic.
So the client is still in control, but they're just more open, more receptive to those positive suggestions.
Yeah, exactly. Think about it like this. You ever have those moments where, like, an idea or a solution just pops into your head out of nowhere? That's your unconscious mind at work, and conversational hypnosis, especially Imir's approach, it just kind of makes that process a little easier?
So you're like planting seeds, and the client's unconscious mind does the rest.
Yes, exactly. And the best part is, these changes, they feel effortless and natural because they're coming from within.
This is honestly blowing my mind. I had no idea. It's like we all have this untapped potential just waiting to be unleashed.
And that's what conversational hypnosis is all about.
Yeah.
Giving people the power to unlock their potential, to create the lives they want.
This has been an incredible deep dive so far, really eye-opening. But before we wrap up, I wanted to touch on something we talked about earlier, the ethical side of things. Because this is powerful stuff, and I know some listeners are probably wondering, can this be misused?
No, absolutely. That's a really important point. As with any kind of therapeutic approach, it's so important that conversational hypnosis is used responsibly and ethically.
So how do we make sure these techniques are being used for good? That it's not about manipulation.
Well, it all comes down to the therapist, their intentions, their training. A truly skilled, ethical practitioner, they will always put the client's well-being first, their autonomy.
So it's not about controlling someone's mind, but about empowering them to make positive changes in their lives.
Yes. And a responsible therapist will always explain the process clearly, get informed consent before they do anything.
Transparency is so important. Make sure the client feels safe, empowered.
Absolutely. And remember, conversational hypnosis is a two-way street. It's collaborative. The client always has the right to say no. to refuse any techniques or suggestions they're not comfortable with.
That's good to hear. It's about working together, not one person dictating to the other.
Exactly. When it's done right, conversational hypnosis can be truly life-changing, helping people overcome obstacles and achieve their goals, live a better life.
It's amazing to me, how this approach, it really taps into people's inner strength, their own wisdom. But we've been mostly focusing on therapy, but I'm curious, are there other places where this conversational hypnosis is being used?
Oh, definitely. It's not just limited to therapy. We're seeing it pop up in healthcare and education,
Hmm.
even sports performance and business.
Wow, that's a pretty diverse range.
Yeah.
So how does it actually work in those areas?
Mm.
Could you give me some examples?
Sure. So take healthcare, for example. They're using conversational hypnosis to help people manage chronic pain, reduce stress and anxiety, and even support, healthier lifestyle changes.
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
Like, for instance, someone who has insomnia, struggling to sleep. The practitioner could use conversational hypnosis to help them kind of shift their mindset about sleep, replace those negative thoughts with a sense of calm and relaxation.
That's incredible. It could really change things for people who haven't been able to find relief, through other means.
Exactly. And in education, we're seeing conversational hypnosis being used to enhance learning, boost students' confidence.
How so?
Well, think about a student who gets really anxious before tests.
Uh,
Conversational hypnosis could help them get into this calm, focused state so they can
Mm.
really perform to their best.
Fascinating. I never would have thought of that. It's amazing how these techniques can help people from all walks of life. What about in the business world? How is conversational hypnosis being applied there?
Well, in the business world, communication and leadership are everything, right? So conversational hypnosis can help there too. Build rapport, inspire teams, even influence decision-making.
So instead of relying on those pressure tactics some businesses use, you can actually use these techniques to create a more, I don't know, a more positive and productive work environment.
Exactly. It's all about tapping into the power of language and connection to encourage teamwork and, achieve common goals.
Wow, this has been an incredible journey, exploring the world of conversational hypnosis and Imir's approach.
Mm.
And I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
I know, right? It's
Yeah.
so exciting. As more research comes out, and more practitioners start using these techniques, I think we're going to see even more incredible applications.
It's really inspiring to think about all the good that can come from this. If our unconscious minds are really that powerful, then imagine what we can accomplish. If we can learn to communicate with them effectively and ethically, of course.
That's the key. And that's what Virginia Imer's work is all about.
Well said. It's been a pleasure chatting with you today. I've learned so much.
Me too.
And to all our listeners out there, we hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity and maybe inspired you to learn more about conversational hypnosis. And until next time, keep those minds open and never stop exploring the possibilities.